Hello everyone, welcome back to part 2 of Monopoly lecture. So today we are going to talk about the price discrimination strategy of a monopoly firm and also the regulations to a monopoly market. So from the previous videos, we have talked about the monopoly profit maximizing strategies where the output level will be determined by where the marginal cost equals to marginal revenues, because the firm is facing the whole market's demands, and that's why the shape of the marginal revenue curve will always be a downward sloping curve. So once we find out that the monopoly firm is making a short-run profits or the long-run profits, then the next question is, can this monopoly firm continue to earn these profits, or maybe to expand these profits by charging different prices? So remember, since the monopoly firm is the one that has the market power to charge different prices, they're not necessary to charge just one single price for the product. So that extends to our today's topics. So instead of charging a single price per unit in the market, the monopolist or monopoly firm can actually charge different prices in the market for the same product they sell to the populations. And when the firm is choosing to charge different prices to different groups of consumer or different individual consumer, we actually call this a price discrimination. So there are three fundamental structures of price discriminations. So we're going to talk about all three of them today. So the first one we're going to go over is called the perfect price discriminations. And then the second one is the second degree price discriminations. And the third one is the third degree price discriminations. So in the perfect price discriminations, what happened is the firm is basically going into the market and trying to charge different prices to different individual consumers. Well, as long as the consumer is willing to pay a certain price for the products in the market, the firm is able to ask the consumer to pay whatever they are willing to pay. Well, this might seem a little weird because you might not imagine yourself actually getting into these situations where you are willing to tell the firm how much you're willing to pay, and when the firm actually charges you, you're actually paying that price. In fact, firms are actually doing this perfect price discriminations in the markets very, very subtly. So I can give you an example. So let's think about how Google is actually making the business. So Google is an ad distributors in the markets. So they have been the best search engines, right, or most used search engines from the webs. In order to search a product on Google, well, you will have to type a certain words. And now imagine if you are trying to buy a computer and you go on Google search, you type in the keyword computer. Well, the first one that comes in, you might actually ask the questions. How come this is the first one pop up on the screen? How come this company is not the second one? How come the company Apple is not the first ones on the list? How come Microsoft is the number 3 in the list? How come Best Buy is the first one? Well, have you ever thought about that? Well, this is basically how Google actually making the very intuitive way to charge the consumer for making ads on the search engine. So if you think a little bit more about this problem here, you could actually imagine when Best Buy trying to make an ad on Google search, well, what are they going to tell Google? Of course, they have to put in a request and say, hey, if people search for this word, please show this page to them. And now the question is, Google will receive thousands or maybe even millions of these requests. So how is Google going to determine which one go first? Well, this is actually quite simple. Google do not need to determine. Google actually throw back the questions back to the consumers. So they will basically ask Best Buy, how much are you willing to pay for your ads? And Google not only just one of their customers, they will ask every single one of them, what is the budget? How much are you willing to pay in order to get this service? Well, imagine if Best Buy actually telling Google, I'm willing to pay $3 per month. Then Google will put Best Buy into a list. And then Apple actually came back to Google and say, I'm willing to pay $3.50. And Apple will be putting on top of Best Buy. If Microsoft actually comes in and say, I'm willing to pay $2. Well, in this case, Microsoft will be at the bottom of the list. And as you can see, you can actually keep thinking, how are people actually paying the ads on Google's search engine? And that will determine the positions of the search. Well, this is a perfect case to demonstrate a perfect price discrimination. The consumer actually revealed their willingness to pay in the market so that the firm can actually charge the maximum price possible. And in this case, we're using the same diagram as we discussed previously. We will have the firm, for example, in this case, Google, who is going to keep providing the service in the markets until some point they will stop. Well, when are they going to stop? Until the point where the firm actually tell Google, hey, you know what? I'm only willing to pay you 1 cent for the ads. But it actually costs Google to make a click to prioritize this firm positions. And that's why, this one click is actually worth at least 2 cents. It requires someone to do it. And it doesn't make up the cost. So in this case, Google will refuse to provide the service for this one last user in the market. So this is the point where price equals to marginal revenues and equals to marginal cost will actually end up to be the solutions in this market structure. And ultimately, what happened is the firm, let's say Google, will keep producing and providing the service in the market until where MR equals MC equals P. And ultimately, they are willing to capture the whole surplus in the market. So the whole triangle, the blue triangles that we've seen previously that belongs to the consumer surplus, now they all belongs to the producer surplus. So the company or the monopoly who actually imposed the perfect price discrimination is willing to capture the maximum amount of surplus in the market. And what's more intuitively correct in this kinds of pricing strategy is that there is no deadweight loss. So deadweight loss, it's actually minimized to 0. There is no loss of transactions. We are basically having a monopoly firm that is running super efficient. Well, this is one way how the price discrimination is formed. Well, in this second degree price discriminations, we actually have a firm, a monopoly firm, who is charging different prices to different groups of consumers. Well, based on what? Well, this time it's not based on the maximum willingness to pay, but this time the firm figured out if they are facing a downward sloping demand curve, then obviously when they are trying to sell more of the products in the market at one time, the firm should be able to charge a lower price to sell that many. If someone is willing to buy more at one time, the firm might actually offer a bulk discount. So because of the downward sloping demand's nature, the firm can actually charge different prices based on how many quantity of the goods the consumer is willing to buy at one time. I'll give a very simple example. For instance, let's say you go to Safeway to buy a Coca-Cola. So you're looking at the shelves, you're trying to pick up a bottle of Coca-Cola. That tells you it's $1.50. And when you look over, there's a whole pack of 6 bottle Coca-Cola that actually charge you only on average $1 per bottle. And now you raise the questions. Hey, I thought they are the same product. How come I'm paying different prices? Again, this is the time where you actually bump into a second degree price discrimination. So people will be discriminated by the quantity that they bought from the markets. The more you buy, the better price you can actually pay for the products, because the firm will figure out the demands in the market and they will adjust the prices based on the quantity bought at one time. And in this case, well, this is the graph that demonstrates the second degree price discriminations. And comparing to a single price scenario, when the firm charging just one uniform price, obviously the firm is willing to maximize the profits comparing to just charging one price. The third degree price discrimination, it's basically a special case here. In the third degree price discriminations, the monopoly firm is trying to find different social groups in the markets. Once they find the social groups in the markets, they will study them and try to find out the demand of that group of people. Well, as long as there are multiple groups in the society or in the markets where the firm can identify it, they will study them and try to ask the following questions. So for instance, we have a product right here where the firm finds this one group of people, which the demand of this group of people presented by D1. Well, according to this group of people, the firm will have a marginal revenue curve that they can actually determine the size or the maximum outputs to produce for this group of consumers. And they will have a profit maximization rule following the MR equal MC to maximize the profits for selling the product to this specific group of people. Well, if there is another group of people, let's say D2, and we also have a different marginal revenue curve from this group of people, which is MR2. Again, by the profit maximization rule, the monopoly firm is going to follow the rule MR equal MC, and this time it's MC equals to MR2 to determine the quantity of output produced for this group of people, and also charging a price accordingly. So again, you might find that the third degree price discriminations not very familiar to you. And indeed, you've always been discriminated by this third degree price discriminations almost every day. So for instance, have you ever thought about when you go to a movie theater, when you're buying a movie ticket? How come sometimes you look at your niece when they are buying the movie tickets with a discount price, let's say a student discount, and you are the one who pay the full price? Isn't that just a price discrimination? And again, well, in this case, well, the movie theater actually trying to price discriminate the age groups. And also think about when you actually going to a gym. When you actually go to the gym and you answer some surveys, and you will ask to actually pay a certain price for your gym memberships. And you might find different users are paying different premium price. And you might ask the questions, why? I thought we are using the same equipment. Well, some of these details are basically used to identify yourself and put it into a different consumer groups so that the firm can charge you a different price. More frequently, a kill point, it's basically a simple tool for the third price discriminations. Have you ever thought about yourself receiving a coupon booklet from mail? If one of your family member actually used the coupon to buy goods from that supermarket and they're getting a discount price, but you are the one who never use it, then obviously you are being discriminated again. So a coupon book can be a very simple tool for the firm to actually price discriminate different social groups in the market. So intuitions is when people actually have a relatively lower values on the times, they will be willing to spend it to flip over the coupon book and sort out what they want to buy from the coupon books. People who place a relatively higher value of the time, obviously they will not do it. So generally speaking, price discrimination is almost everywhere in our life. Well, even though price discrimination happens so often in our life, you have to also realize there are three fundamental conditions for a price discrimination strategy to be able to implement. Number one, the firm who implementing the price discrimination must have some control over prices of the products. So that means, well, this firm must be a price searcher in the market, or this firm must be facing a downward sloping demand curve. And number two, the seller must be able to distinguish among buyers who are willing to pay different prices. It could be individual buyers, or it could be individual groups of buyers. And number three, in a price discriminations environment, reselling the goods to other buyers is not going to be permitted. It cannot be permitted. So what it means is we say, well, there is no arbitrage. Well, imagine if you're buying a movie ticket that you pay full price usually, and your niece can actually buy a movie ticket with a student discount price. If the student discount ticket can be resold to you from your niece, and you can actually use it to enter the theater, well then, who is going to buy the full price ticket? So reselling the product is not permitted in the price discrimination settings. So again, well, the whole idea for studying the price discrimination is not just to investigate how much more money the monopoly firm can earn, but it's actually give us a very intuitive way to think about how the price discriminations will affect the allocations efficiency. So as we discussed in the perfectly priced discrimination case, the monopolist can actually produce up to the level of output where P equals to MC. And remember, this is a condition we call a resource allocated efficiency. So that means in general, if there is a monopoly firm who is willing to pay, who is willing to perfectly price discriminate and produce the level of outputs up to what people or how the populations in the markets is willing to buy, we think that we are actually not wasting any resources in the society. We're still providing the most of the resources to produce what people want in the society, to satisfy their demands. So that's why in the social perspective, the perfectly priced discrimination firm or monopoly firm is actually not a bad idea because it maximizes the social welfare in the markets. Well, very quickly, we also want to talk about how we can actually constrain the monopoly firm. Remember, monopoly firm, they are usually evil. We want to find out how we can actually contain a monopoly firm, especially for the one who produced it or created by the governments or the legal barriers. So there are two simple topics that we are going to discuss here. One is the regulations for a natural monopoly, and also a antitrust policy. So the regulation usually is used to prevent natural monopoly to dominate the markets, and antitrust policy is trying to prevent any possible monopoly markets to develop. So to talk about the natural monopoly, again, we are basically referring to a scenario where the productions of a product will have this enormous, large economies of scale, where the demand of the product in the market, it's not large enough to allow two firms or more than one firms to produce in the markets. So in this graph right here, you can actually see how the concept is demonstrated. So in the natural monopoly case, we will see a product that will take this very, very large long-run average total cost to get to a lower point, where the firm might not actually have any advantage to expand. So in this case, the monopoly firm in the market might only interested to produce 50 units in the market in order to basically charge a price of $20 to earn some level of profits. However, if we have someone, right, so there is a new firm comes in to the market, and this new firm actually produce double of the size of the products in the market. So let's say they produce another additional 50 units. Well, by doubling the outputs, each firm producing 50 units, that means they are paying $15 to produce each unit on average. However, they can only charge up to $10 per each unit they sell in the market. So that means when we have two firms producing in this market, each firm, for one unit they sell, they will have to lose $5. So literally, there is no intuitive idea to have two firms to produce in a single market. So how are we going to regulate the monopoly if we don't want them to actually reduce the efficiency in the markets? So let's say we do have a natural monopoly market, and we know we cannot fit two firms in there. So how are we going to deal with it? So several ways to do it. Number one, just like the PG&E in California, the government can publicly own the natural monopoly to take over the operations so that we can drive the company from a profit maximizing objective to a different objective goals. And number two, subject to price and quantity constraints, we can actually restrict the price in the market so that the firm will not charge the monopoly price. And number three, we can actually have an auctions to the firm agreeing to the most competitive price and quantity conditions. Only firms who are permitted to this competitive price and quantity conditions will be allowed to actually run the monopoly operations. Well, regarding the price restriction policy, you can think about how the policy is going to be formed. So one easy way to think about this solution is to imagine what would be the best solutions in this market. So again, for any market structure, the best solutions for allocated efficiency is where the firm will produce where P equals to MC. So P, it's basically demonstrated on the demand curve in this graph. And we have the MC curve plotting out. So this P equal MC conditions will be here at this level of outputs. So this is the perfect competitive output levels. This is the most efficient level of outputs to produce for this consumers in the markets. However, we have a problem here. Since the price that the firm can charge in the market is only PC, but when the firm is producing QC, the average total cost is well above the price. So that means if we are actually forcing this marginal cost pricing rule, this monopoly firm will always be running into a loss. And obviously, no one will ever actually excel. So that's why in the later time, we actually came up with an idea. If we cannot charge the marginal cost equals to price, we might actually change it to average cost pricing rule. So this average cost pricing rule basically suggests instead of charging where P equal MC, we are going to allow firms to charge up to where P equals ATC. So this is the restricted price that basically guarantee the monopoly firm going to earn zero economic profits in the long run. So again, firm who is earning normal profits or zero economic profit will stay in the business because they have nothing better to do in their life. However, this will at least guarantee that the firm is producing closer to the most efficient outputs, QC. So this is basically a very logical way to basically set prices constraints in a natural monopoly market in order to restrain the power. Well, the regulations in practice is actually very difficult. Indeed, by showing you the graph, you might actually understand the logic of it. However, well, it's very difficult to actually find that marginal cost of the firms, and also it's extremely difficult to find out where this average cost and marginal cost curve will intercept the demand in the markets. So in order to actually constrain the monopoly firm, there are two very common practices that the government usually use. One is called the rate of returns rules. So the rate of return rule basically allows firms to price its product in a way where they can actually earn zero economic profits or normal profits. However, I have demonstrated in the graph, it seems like a very easy scenario, but there are just so much that the firm will come back to the government and complain. So for instance, firm can actually say that, well, they have all these extra expenses in the operations where will drive up the cost of the production so that they have to charge a higher price. There is almost no containment of the cost. The cost of a monopoly operations will inflate so fast so that the firm can actually charge even a higher price. Well, another strategy is called the price cap strategies or price cap rule. So the price cap strategy basically places a maximum limits on the price that the firm can charge for the products. It's almost like a price ceiling. So in this case, the price cap basically put a constraints to the price in the markets. However, because the price cap is so lack of the flexibility to adjust, especially firm costs can change very quickly. It could be seasonally, it could be monthly. So lack of the flexibility to adjust the price through times will also sometimes kill the monopoly firm in a natural monopoly setting. So either one way or the other, well, regulating a monopoly is still a very difficult task. So generally, we have covered so much of the monopoly operations in this chapter. Well, at least you have to know monopoly is not an efficient firm in general. If they are going to charge a monopoly price in the markets, well, the only thing happen is we will expect to have some level of debt loss from a monopoly markets. However, when the monopoly firm is using a perfect price discrimination strategy, they are willing to retrieve those debt loss and maximize their efficiency in the market again. Well, when we have a natural monopoly case, well, we have to depend on the regulations to actually contain the monopoly firm. However, it's not easy. We're still trying to find better tools or better rulings in order to contain those monopoly firms in the markets. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next videos.